There we are, Anthony. Welcome, you guys. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. This is going to be the first of our weekly Bitcoin mining Q&A sessions with our resident Bitcoin mining analyst, Anthony Power. So last weekend, Anthony, we went on our inaugural live stream for the Bitcoin halving event. We had our good friend Sebastian on. We also invited Tom, but Sebastian was able to make it. We had a ton of fun, a lot of great questions. The audience seemed to really like this form of engaging with us, the live questions. So we said, you know what, Anthony, let's give the people what they want and let's do it weekly. So we're going to try and have this every Wednesday, you guys, 10 a.m. Mountain Time. We'll have Anthony on here. We'll try and get through as many questions as we can, you guys. A lot of demand in terms of questions last week. So if you want to make sure you go to the priority or top, you can do a super thanks or super like for your question. We'll make sure to address it. And then Anthony, on top of that, we've had a busy week. We've also launched our podcast now on all the major players. So Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple iTunes, and a couple hundred downloads already, Anthony. So definitely some appetite there. How are you feeling about all the new launches and initiatives at Power Mining?
Yeah, feel good. Just seeing, I think Sebastian's just joined the he's watching there. So yeah, no, it's been a good week. I enjoyed the inaugural podcast, the live podcast on Saturday. It was great to have Sebastian on as well. He brings a lot to this space. Always very appreciative, and I've been on his channel, and we'll reciprocate this many times because there's not many people in the space that sort of add value. It's good to get those people on the channel that know what they're talking about, done a lot of work in this space. And yeah, people like what Sebastian does. We like what he does, and hopefully, some of the people that follow him like what we do as well. So it's all good for the space. But yeah, we'll get him on again, definitely.
Yeah, it sure is. I love the collaboration, even among the mining CEOs, right? It's a very tight-knit group, and it's a good community here. We managed to get up to 270 concurrent viewers with Sebastian. We're at 32 now, so we'll see. If you're watching this, Sebastian, how much of that was your pull versus our pull? But I will say that was a Saturday and it was a halving event. So just to preface with that. So we'll move into questions here, you guys. We've gotten about an hour and a half today. So we're going to try and go through as many questions as we can. The first one I see on screen here, it looks like is about TeraWulf, Anthony. So maybe we can get into that. Let me just back up here. Sorry, Anthony. Riot. Our first question was from BJ for Riot. This is a super interesting one. So actually, I put out the podcast with Riot and Jason last talking about Corsicana coming online, their outlook for 2024. We just put that onto the podcast platform last night, Anthony. It's a couple months old. This one already got 25 downloads. So there's a lot of interest, obviously, in Riot. One of the big players here. Share price has been beaten down this year, and they've got a world-class facility coming online. What do you make of Riot Platforms?
I mean, Riot, we're one of the two biggest miners for the last couple of years, and them and Marathon Digital were moving ahead of the pack. To be honest with you, this is before CleanSpark joined that group. But along with Riot, along with Marathon, Riot had some production issues at their Rockdale facility. And we know more about that now. We know it was about machines that were not performing as well as they should be. And Jason came on the podcast in February and articulated that. And they put a massive order in to replace those machines and grow the hash rate at Rockdale to over 15 exahash, by September 2024. So over the next sort of 5 months, you'll see the updates coming through from Riot. Machines will be, replacing that operational hash rate, which the first time they actually put it into their monthly update of 8.6 for the month of March. We'll start seeing that operational hash rate increase month by month now. So we'll get, hopefully get to the 15 exahash there. But at the same time, they've energized Corsicana. They've energized it on time. They gave the date, months and months ago, and they've already energized. So that'll be interesting in the April update to see how much hash rate they've got online there. Now that building that they've energized, I think, has a total of about 3.7 exahash when all the mining machines have been installed into their immersion cooling technology. So that whole site at Corsicana, the 1 gigawatt site, the largest site in the world when it's going to be fully operated, it's going to be fully fully immersion cooling. So I think 2024 could be, the turnaround year for Riot. They've had some problems. I mean, they had the weather issues back in December 2022, and that took a year to rectify buildings F&G in terms of ordering some of the parts that had to be replaced because of the damage from the weather. And these parts had to come from the United Kingdom, so there was a long lead time. And we've talked about, when facilities are being built, the lead time on some of the parts, you've got to build that in. It's not just about going to the local DIY center and start, ordering things off the shelf there. Transformers and this immersion cooling parts and all that, come from all over the world. And so, some companies allow sort of like 9 months, 12 months lead time when they're thinking about building sites. Corsicana broke ground 2 years ago, and now it's starting to energize. So this is going to be, interesting to see how some of these other miners, can get to where they need to be by the end of the year. But I think 2024 is going to be good for Riot Platforms. And the great thing is we're going out to see the Corsicana facility in June. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, that should be really a world-class trip, Anthony. The top Bitcoin mining facility in the United States, largest in the world by size. I think we're going to go down June 13th, maybe try and hit Core Scientific. And then there's a Hut 8 investor presentation the following week. So we're going to try and get out and travel a bit. You guys maybe do some cool kind of interactive videos while we're out there. Now, the next question here, hi from Portugal. We've also got viewer Vinny K from Toronto. So Anthony was just asking how close Toronto is to Calgary, and I said not very. We also have a viewer in Canmore here, and I said that's a lot closer to where I'm based. So I'm giving Anthony some geography lessons as we go here. But Vinny from Toronto, he wants to know about CleanSpark. This is one of the most popular companies we cover, Anthony. Obviously, a lot going on with this organization as they start to emerge as one of the top players in this space. Big contention right now between them and Mara in terms of blocks per day, Bitcoin mined, market cap, share price. There's a lot of jockeying for that top spot. What do you make of CleanSpark right now? I know over the last couple of days, they were able to get the share price back up over $20. May not be today with the pullback, but seeing some strength out of CleanSpark as well.
Yeah, I mean, operationally, we can't really fault CleanSpark at all. They've grown that hash rate significantly. 17 exahash at the moment, going to be 20 exahash in the next couple of months, going to get to 32 by the end of the year. All those miners are paid for, so that's not an issue anymore. They've raised that money through the ATM. What they're doing now is they're looking at many options. I think up to 20 options for potential sites, and they've already ruled out sites in Texas. I personally think they'll probably stay in the US. I think the fact that they want to be classed as the American Bitcoin miner, that to me sends a message that they're happy. They've got a model that works in certain states in the US, and they're growing out in those states. And if they're providing that service to what they're doing at Denton, say, to the communities there, they can replicate that in other areas and do the same and bring more revenues from the taxation, from whatever they do in those areas there. So, that's a model that seems to be working well for them. Production-wise, they're always in that sort of like top 3, top 4. So they always get the most out of the machines. They've got an efficient fleet. We're talking 24, 25 at the moment. That's going to reduce when these new miners start being installed. So they had an efficient fleet before the new miners. And bear in mind, we only have to go back about 2 years ago, and they were 2 exahash. So, we are talking a new fleet. And so there'll be the latest, S19s, the XPs, now the S21s and T21s will be going into sites as well. So, compared to some of the other miners, they've got a relatively new fleet because they've only been a miner for just over 3 years. So I expect them to grow. I think they'll achieve the 32. If they can get them sites, the miners are on order, they'll be installed, ready to go. And, they've purchased a number of sites to get to 20 exahash. So that was an issue a few months ago, but we saw them buy some sites in Tennessee, also buy another site in Denton. And so, everything seems to be going well for them. I'm hoping that, we'll get regular updates as they determine which sites they're going to, obviously when they've purchased them to highlight, so that we know that the gap then to get to that 32 is going to be coming quick and fast. But everything's going right. The share price is over $20 last time I looked, and market capitalization well over 4.5 billion. And if you only have to go back to October last year when it was about 600 million. So anyone who had, CleanSpark shares in 2023 will be sitting on a very healthy profit at the moment. So yeah, no, everything's going well at CleanSpark.
Yeah, it certainly is. They're one of my top holdings, just for full transparency, and definitely a company to watch as they move into that tier one echelon. It's very exciting to think where these companies are going to end up at the end of the year, Anthony. After all the growth, the ATMs, the expansion that we've seen going into the start of the year. Now, Sebastian, thanks so much for tuning in here. We just had a comment saying it's crazy that there's only 54 or 60 people or whatnot watching this. We definitely want to do more collaboration. So we're going to get people like Sebastian, Tom, British Hodl, Talking Investing. We can get these type of people on the channel. Let us know who you'd like us to try and reach out to and collaborate. We also are going to play around with the timing. So let us know if this time of day works well for you or not. We realize it's kind of midday on a work day, at least in North America here, but we're open to trying whatever works for you guys. Now, the next question here, Anthony, I wanted to talk about, there's Hive, and then there's a couple other specific company questions, but this one came up from Nikki, and it talks about the most important metric overall. Now, we do a lot of charts analysis on our channel. We always stress that no one individual metric can be taken in isolation. But in your opinion, if you were looking into these miners, I have a number in mind for me as well. What's the most important operating number to evaluate their performance?
I mean, there's so many metrics, but the one and only metric is profitability. Is the one that that you have to look at. We cover. Obviously, we'll know in this next few weeks as we start seeing the quarter one or the first 3 months of 2024, because it might not be quarter one for some miners, depending on their accounting periods. But they're releasing all this first 3 months of 2024 starting to be released. This week, actually, we've got miners releasing this week, and then they'll go all the way through May. And so people will be looking at the sort of like the net income from those positions there, and the fact now that both sets of accounting treatment, so you've got IFRS and you've got GAAP, both allow them to use the ability to value Bitcoin HODL at its market value and not at the lowest point. And so I'm expecting the period of that then 3 months to be green across the board for all the miners. If it's not green, then there are some issues. But then you can break it down. Energy cost is important. So energy cost is the biggest cost a miner will face. I mean, yes, they're buying facilities, they're paying for mining machines, but every month that the energy cost is significant. And we know that there's 2 or 3 miners put the energy cost to mine a Bitcoin on their updates. So for some of them, we don't have to wait till that quarter one numbers come out. We can pretty much get a good understanding of what the revenues were and what the energy costs were, and that's your biggest cost. And then you can go back and look at a previous quarter and start putting together the operating costs, so salaries, G&A, legal expenses, interest costs, because they're generally fixed unless the company's growing massively and bringing on lots more employees. Those type of costs are fixed, but the energy cost, unless they've got a fixed cost, and not many miners have got a fixed cost, they're paying market values. And just to give you an understanding of that, if you look at sort of like IREN, who put their monthly cost to mine a Bitcoin, and in their current month, they also put the sort of like the last 3 months of the costs as well, and it has been increasing. So in March it was over $20,000 for IREN to mine 1 Bitcoin, and what that means is now past the halving, in terms of energy, that's $40,000 to mine. And just going off topic a little bit, the difficulty is going to go up post the halving for the first time, because generally mining machines, will get, the less efficient machines will get taken off because it's not profitable. But this halving, because of the transaction fees, and even today, even 3 or 4 days after the halving, we're seeing significant amounts being paid out in terms of transaction fees. So, some of the blocks that have been, achieved today, we're talking 6, 7, even 8 Bitcoin, not 3.125 as it should be. With us, if we go back over the last year, generally, in those months where there wasn't significant transaction fees, you're looking at about sort of 5 or 10% in transaction fees. So, maybe a couple of 100,000, on terms of 6.25, you might be getting 6.6 Bitcoin. So a little bit more, a little bit more in transaction fees. We're seeing now more transaction fees still than what they're giving out in actual block rewards. So,
well, and Anthony, we just have a comment here from Core Scientific, 25 Bitcoin yesterday. We were singing their praises for 28, 30 consistently before halving. They're having some pretty big days post halving comparable.
It doesn't even look like a halving for Core Scientific at the moment, because they're just knocking out. I mean, it was 57 the immediate day after the halving when the transaction fees literally went through the roof, and then we've seen it come down. But again, it looks like that 25 is stable, and what that means is for Core Scientific at the moment they are quite clearly ahead of Marathon Digital in terms of Bitcoin mined in the month of April. So with only 5 more days to go, can Marathon, switch on more miners to sort of like catch them? It doesn't look like it at the moment. I think Marathon are sort of matching maybe 25 at the moment. I think they've got to that position. But if you think when Core Scientific mined 57, I think Marathon were on about 31, and CleanSpark were on 42. So Core Scientific have made real use of this post-halving, getting some really good numbers out. So, and again, with the Bitcoin price at 65, 66,000, it's hanging around that at the moment like that. This is great revenues, because go back 3 months ago when we were discussing the halving, then it wasn't those sort of numbers that people were talking about. They turned around and said the Bitcoin, 40,000 Bitcoin price, and we were talking about mining machines coming off. And it's not happening. The Bitcoin price is high. The rewards, the transaction fees are high. It's great news for the miners, because the loss in production, with the difficulty increasing constantly, they're still getting more revenues because of the transaction fees.
Yeah, they sure are. So we just crossed 80 live viewers concurrently. So let's get this party fired up a little bit, Anthony. Let's get back into the viewer questions here. Now, somebody I'll bring up the name here in a second, just said Core Scientific Q1 results, Gary. So on Q1 topic, Gary, we just reached out to all the miners that we cover. We got requests back from 8 of them for their Q1 earnings releases. So we're going to be scheduling those pretty much right when May starts throughout to maybe the 25th or so. Almost every day, you guys, we're going to be having earnings interviews with the CEOs here. We'll post them in advance. Make sure you get your questions in. There's no excuse that we're asking softball questions, because these come from you guys. Obviously, make them appropriate, make them respectful. Don't ask why their share price is what it is, because CEOs do not answer that question, and we want them back on the channel. Now, let's move along here, Anthony. So we've got 4 comments pinned here. Bitdeer. Now, Bitdeer is one that we didn't cover in our live stream with Sebastian. We've got the Wolf Pack out there. We talk about all the howling. Now we've got the Seal Miner, A1. So we might have to do some seal barks here pretty soon, Anthony, for all the people who are watching for Bitdeer. What do you think of this company? In my mind, one of the most vertically integrated, most diversified businesses out there. Really interesting company. Big fan of Bitdeer. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, they do everything. I mean, if they're an energy company, it'd be all encompassing, because they do everything else. And they're mining, they're hosting, they're going into high performance computing, and they came out this year and said we're going to start making our own machines. And somebody was saying, well, but you've got to remember where Bitdeer was previously. Bitdeer was formed out of Bitmain. So, the 2 CEOs of the 2 companies were actually partners and co-founded Bitmain together. And when you look at the number of employees that Bitdeer has, it's in excess of 200. 50 of those work in R&D. So they're working to improve the way they do services in that company. So they have the cloud mining, where people can go in, individuals, retail investors can go in and buy hash rate and get a return on hash rate. Very, very good for Bitdeer. They've got a hosting business, they've got a good self-mining business, and they've got the ability to maneuver when the market determines as well. So they don't have like long contracts. So they can determine, like, if we're in a bull cycle and it makes more sense to do self-mining, they can flip from the hosting side of the business and concentrate on that there. They are growing the self-mining. We've seen the updates out there. They've got sites coming online. They broke ground in Ohio. They've got sites in Bhutan. They've got sites in Norway. They've got a big site next door. So literally, you can throw a tennis ball from Rockdale and it'll land in the Bitdeer facility. It's literally joined to the same site there. So that they're sharing the same power conduit down there. But this seal miner for me was game changing, and their first generation. So this is the first one they've brought to the market. Came out with 18.1 in terms of joules per terahash, the efficiency. So that puts it right between S21 and T21. So that's matching what Bitmain bring out and matching what MicroBT came out. And I was on a call, with Dubai last week, and I was hearing numbers that 18 for the second generation could come down even lower, significantly lower than 15, which we know the S21 Pro operates at. But also, I was also hearing that Bitmain also can bring out something that. So there's this efficiency race at the moment going on between the miners. And then we had the announcement yesterday from Block to say they're bringing in their mining machine, which I was aware they were producing, but now they've announced it. We can talk about that in a while. But there's all these Auradine who are partnered with Marathon Digital. They're coming to the market with a machine as well. So it's not just the three big ones anymore. Now there are 3-4 other mining companies and or other suppliers. They are mining companies as well, but other suppliers of machines. And so this could work quite well. But in Bitdeer's, they'll look to build machines for themselves first. And if the market dictates that, there's a premium to be made by selling to competitors, they'll sell machines and get a premium on the revenue as well. So it works really well for them. They can either create and build. They need a significant number of machines for their own sites. But if the market determines that there's going to be a premium, and bear in mind 2021 when the Bitcoin price rose to 69,000, the hash rate, some of the miners were paying $80 a terahash. Now, generally now in 2024, a lot of the miners have been paying $14, $16, $17 a terahash now. So that's like 20% of the prices they were paying at the peak of the last bull cycle. There is an expectation that as Bitcoin price rises, the mining machine rises as well. That's how Bitmain sort of make their profit. So when it's depressed, they can charge less to get people to buy the machines. But when the Bitcoin price rallies and everyone wants machines, the supply and demand, then they can sort of start increasing the prices and get the profits that way. But when you've got like 4 new entrants to the market, and Bitdeer being one of those, I think it's great. It's competition, and if these machines prove to be, they've been tested, and they're going to start making significant amounts of these machines. And the biggest cost of making a mining machine is the actual chips that they're buying. So from TSMC, they'll be buying these chips. That's about 80% of the mining cost. So they've done the numbers, and it works out really well. So if they build them just for themselves, it's a win-win. If they build them and can also supply other mining companies as demand requires it, it's a win-win-win. So I can't see any downside to this at the moment.
Yeah, hard to argue with a win-win-win, Anthony. Now you keep saying the chip costs are 80%. Are they making their own chips? They're still buying the chips, aren't they?
No, they buy the chips from TSMC.
Yeah, so they can only really control the other 20%, which is the far minority of that cost, eh?
Yeah, but what it's saying is it's not a significant cost to build these. So that's what they're saying. It's actually quite to build themselves. It's better than buying them at the moment. Even though your miners are paying $14, $16 a terahash, they still believe they can build it cheaper than what miners are paying at the moment.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Fuelman 911, you've got the right idea here. See, Anthony, we pump up the power. Now we're at 92 viewers. Pump up the power. That you could coin that, Anthony, with your last name too. You guys hit the like button. Let's try and push this out. We got to get over 100 just for our own egos here, so we don't think it was Sebastian pulling in the views on the weekend. Now, Anthony, we've got a number of more questions coming in on the live stream here. So we talked about Bitdeer. How about this one, Anthony? Soluna. So got the attention of CG. It's got the attention of us as well. Very unique business model here. Really operate on a different kind of outlook than some of the big players, the hyperscalers like the Riot, the Mara. Soluna has gone after specifically renewable energy that's stranded at smaller scale renewable facilities, like, say, for example, wind farms, right? We've got some really sharp images of these data centers that they put up, Anthony. Dorothy 1 was essentially the blueprint here. And now John's come on and said, hey, we've got it dialed in. We're ramping up with Dorothy 2. We've got the secret sauce or the equation figured out. What do you think about Soluna here in terms of the risk reward potential?
I like Soluna, and people keep saying, oh, they're such a small miner. Go back 2 years ago, most of the miners in the analysis now were all small miners. It wasn't that long ago, right, with 3 exahash, and Marathon were just over that, and Bitfarms and Hive are a couple of exahash. Everyone starts small. Go back 15 months ago and look at what IREN's hash rate was. It was about 1.53 in January 2023, and now they're at 8. So small miners can grow. It's going to be, of course, it's going to be challenging. But there are a few things I like about Soluna in the terms of, I like the way the quality of the build that they have for their facilities for the mining machines. They look, I've seen the aerial view shots and the videos that they've put out there, and they look fairly impressive. I thought it was a virtual video had been produced, but it wasn't. It was a real life video of the site, because it looks so pristine. The actual build. They've got about 0.8, just over, in 0.8 exahash in terms of self mining. They've got double that in terms of hosted mining, and they just allocated 2 megawatts to take forward their HPC side of the business. And people might say, well, 2 megawatts doesn't sound a lot. Well, 2 megawatts. If you look at what Bit Digital are using at the moment, they're using 3 megawatts for their 50 million annualized revenue. So 2 megawatts could get you, a significant amount of HPC support services there. So it's, potentially it's good. It's a very small mine. I mean, the market capitalization is probably less than 10 million. It's got value. There's value in the company. If you go to the balance sheet, I think the net book value of the company, take away the minority interest, is about 27 million. So again, we talked about, investing $1. What does your dollar get to? So if you invest, like at the moment, $1 in IREN is $1 in book value. So Riot Platforms, before a couple of days ago, was literally $1 in Riot was $1 on their net book value. And then you compare that to some of the to Marathon and CleanSpark, and it's like you've got to invest $3 to get $1 in assets. And so there's a valuation difference on these companies. Yes, they're small, and but all miners started small. One thing they have done is they've tapped into energy, like you say, wind and solar, and gone to where and arranged deals whereby to say if you've got stranded energy that you're not able to utilize, and they've made some deals doing that way, and they've got some good rates. So they've got potential there. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how some of these miners go through 2024 post the halving now, whether any of them sort of like can grow significantly with the ability to raise capital or not raise capital. Because the small miner, it's a challenge to go to have an ATM. The debt markets are really battered because of 2022, when we saw a number of miners getting closer to Chapter 11, and some went into Chapter 11. So I don't think many miners will be going down the debt route. Soluna sell their Bitcoin on a daily basis, so they don't have a hodl of Bitcoin there to utilize either. Some of the other smaller miners, like SATO Technology, they've got about 60 Bitcoin. DMG probably got about 450 Bitcoin. So some of these small ones have built up a decent amount of Bitcoin that are getting through the halving. But the Soluna Holdings are just sort of like doing things as they expect them to do, and actually they're in that sort of, they're not like a poor performing miner. They're in some of the metrics they came out quite well. But time will tell. I said before, there seems to be a gulf now between the miners that can raise capital and the ones that can't raise capital. So, if you look at, apart from the big three that we talk about, and then you look at the likes of TeraWulf, you look at IREN, you look at Bitfarms, who are going to grow hash rates. All those three, in a year's time, will either be close to or more than 20 exahash, and that seems to be, where tier one needs to be, in 12 months' time. Anyone over 20 exahash should be in that sort of tier one. it's then like, how do these other miners get to that? And Bitdeer, we just talked about Bitdeer. They've got plans. Cypher have got plans, but a lot of the plans are in 2025 because they're building sites, and the sites are taking 12 months to build. So unless you can go out and buy a site like CleanSpark have done, they've bought 3 sites in recent months. You're having to build a site, and the sites, to build a couple of 100 megawatts. If you're starting from scratch, it's going to take you 12 months to 18 months because of the fact that some of the lead time and some of the parts of those sites are a long time there. So going back to Soluna, it's going to be challenging for them, but I think with what they're receiving in rewards at the moment is going to be a blessing for all these small miners because they're getting more revenues than they expected, and it'll just be a case of see how they come through that. And they've got quite a few different projects on the go, so their expectation, bear in mind it was a lower Bitcoin price, is quite rosy for 2024. So it'll be interesting when John comes on and does his quarterly update, how revised their presentation is going forward with a Bitcoin price significantly higher than what was in their presentation initially, and it is significantly higher. I think people should do a little bit more due diligence in some of these smaller miners, Soluna being one of them.
Yeah, we've got Bit Digital as well in the questions here, Anthony. So we're going to talk about them. I'm also getting a number of questions about the tariffs associated with Bitfarms. I don't know if you saw that this morning, Anthony, or picked up on that. I'm just going to do a quick reminder on a few things, Anthony. So if you want to take a look at the Bitfarms newsfeed there, see if you can dig anything up, that'd be great. We're going to talk about Wolf next, you guys. Just a couple quick updates for those of you who are new right now on the stream. We're going to start trying to do this every Wednesday morning, you guys. So let us know if this time works for you. I saw some of the UK viewers saying this time is optimal. We're happy to do it now, earlier, later, whatever works. We're also going to be doing questions on any and all miners. So if you guys have some miners that maybe we don't cover regularly, this is a good opportunity to ask questions. And then in addition to that, we've started scheduling our Q1 earnings interviews, which should be very lucrative for a lot of these miners. Last quarter, going through not only the all-time high Bitcoin prices, but also pre-halving the full block rewards. This will be the last quarter of that as well. And all of this information can be found obviously on the YouTube channel or now on all the main podcast players. So Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, we're on there as well. So Anthony, we've got some questions about Bit Digital, but before that, we've got to get into TeraWulf here. A number of the Wolf Pack are represented here today, you guys. Let's see the Wolf emojis. Let us know where you're from. Let us know if you're in the Wolf Pack. And Anthony, let us know your thoughts on TeraWulf.
Yeah, I like TeraWulf. Again, they're in that group that are heading towards significant hash rate. They're at 8 exahash at the moment. They're going to grow to 10 exahash by the middle of the year. And, they've got plans to go even further. They've also got the ability to expand where they currently are as well. So they're going to expand at the Nautilus site, which is their nuclear site. That's currently 50 megawatts there, and they can expand that another 50 megawatts to 100 megawatts. But they've also got Lake Mariner site, and they have the ability to expand that site there. Obviously, it takes time to provide extension, but they have been adding to that site already. I mean, building 4 is in construction at the moment, and when that's completed, they'll get to 10 exahash. I think the plan to the end of the year is about just over 13 exahash, but then they've got plans for 2025 as well. There was one issue people were talking about a few months ago was about the debt, and I think they've come out and announced how they repaid quite a significant chunk of that debt. So they made a lot of payments in the last few months, and we've seen the likes of Bitfarms that had big debt, and they've managed to get rid of that. And I think TeraWulf will do the same. Patrick Florida, CFO, well respected in the community, he came on Spaces and he articulated about what it cost to mine one of their Bitcoin, and pre-halving, the figure he was quoting there was 25,000. So in the pre-halving Bitcoin price, they were making significant profits on a daily basis, sort of $450,000, $500,000 a day, and then you saw them make that big payment down on the debt there. So the debt now is about 75 million. They've still got about 30, 40 million cash there. So if you look at like the net effect of that, it's not as big as it was, 6 months ago when it was over 100 million in debt. So they've got a plan to reduce that, and with all these miners, that plan could happen, a little bit quicker, because no one's expecting these sort of fees and rewards and the Bitcoin price at the moment. And just think, if the Bitcoin price went to 70,000 or 75,000, what would the impact on that be for the miners? We were expecting, a lower price than this. If people said, you'd be 65, 66,000 post the halving, I think people would have jumped and took that straight away. But these transaction fees have put it into a different spin at the moment, and there doesn't seem to be any give up on that. So TeraWulf, they have got one of the cheapest energy costs. So we talk about energy. North of the site, it's only 2 cents a kilowatt hour. It's a little bit more. It's the market price at Lake Mariner, but if you look at the blended price, so this is looking at both sites and doing an average cost of energy. They've clearly announced over the last few updates that's around about the 3.5 cent a kilowatt hour, and there ain't many miners out there that can match that. And one or two maybe. So that's good for TeraWulf. It's your biggest cost. They've been growing the hash rate, even though they've had debt on the balance sheet there. The other thing about the company is that differentiates them from all the other companies is the amount of holding by the insiders. So the board own over 40% of the company. So they have a vested interest to make that company work as well as possible. It's all right having a few shares, in a company, but when you've got 40% of a company that's worth 800 million, you've got a vested interest to make sure that you don't, that's your objectives are the same as the company's objectives. So I like TeraWulf.
See, we can't pause and redo it on the live stream, Anthony. You got caught there, buddy. Now, next question. I didn't want to keep it on the screen too long because it blocks you a little bit here, Anthony. Saying the best CEO interview we've done on the channel is TeraWulf. I would probably agree it's up there. That was a really fun one with Paul Prager. So if you guys haven't seen that, check it out. I'm going to upload it onto iTunes actually today, that one. But Dashiell Rodriguez here has said, Hut is so low from their all-time high, over 100 million in debt. What are your thoughts on Asher's approach? So we've actually been fortunate enough to meet Asher a few times here on the channel. I really like his approach. I think he's a young, up-and-coming, smart guy. He's got a fresh outlook to the space. He's got a good mind for capital markets and investment, M&A activity, obviously going through the merger with Hut 8 USBTC. Jamie Leverton obviously was a great addition to Hut 8 Mining at the time. She was a big proponent of their HODL. Sue Ennis has often told me they've wanted to spend money on things and Jamie wouldn't let them. So it's great that Jamie got them in that position. That was a big, I guess, carrot in terms of that merger was the balance sheet of Hut 8, the infrastructure of USBTC. Now we've got Asher at the helm. He's given us the notice, Anthony, not to expect big impacts until about Q2. What do you think of this guy, and what do you think of his outlook with Hut 8?
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the younger CEOs in the mining space. But bear in mind, it's a very new industry. We talked about this many times. From a public miner perspective, we're talking about 6 years, and most of the miners that we talk about probably 3 years. So the oldest ones are 6 years. You're quite right. I mean, Hut 8. Albeit their performance over the last 18 months before the merger, they had so many issues, one with their energy provider, then they had the Drumheller issues there. They've closed the Drumheller site now. But they had all these issues, but one thing they did have was they had probably one of the strongest balance sheets of all the mining companies. So, when you've got a HODL of over 9,000 Bitcoin, it puts you in a really, really good position. Flip that over to USBTC, they had all the sites, they had energy contracts, but they had no money, and they were sort of like cash flow, having probably close to having some difficulties. So when they say merger of equals, both companies needed what the other had, needed access to sites and energy. So the new Hut 8 has relocated from Canada into the US. I think that's a positive move, and Now you've got, you know, a company that has a good balance sheet in terms of the fact that it's got, you know, assets on that balance sheet worth more than the market capitalization at the moment. So, you know, when we talk about the likes of Riot and IREN and Soluna, you add HUT to that list as well. So, you know, for every dollar you're investing in HUT at the moment, you're probably getting about $1.30, $1.40 in terms of assets. So that's if they sold the parts of the company, it's more than a market capitalization. And so, you know, but performance-wise, we've got to see that improve. So Ash has been quite clear. He's put plans in place. Then plans take up to sort of like Q2. So he sort of said, in Q3, judge me on what I put in place for this year, and you should start seeing the green shoots. So I suppose we can give him that period. I mean, he only took over a couple of months ago. So, you know, give him, you know, some football managers last less than that. Let's give them an opportunity to get them plans in place, because when you're the CEO, you're making the big decisions, and then, you know, Q3 will judge. But we'd expect to see improvements as you go along. So it'll be interesting to see their first. I'm going to say it's their first proper full quarterly update when it comes out, because the last quarter was literally 1 month of a merged company. They merged at the end of November. So when they put out their December numbers, it didn't have everything in there that, you know, you'd expect to see. It was only had 1 month of the merged company.
Anthony, are you still there, buddy? Okay, guys, just let me know in the comment section here if you can still hear myself, Anthony, or neither of us. We're going to move along here. We've got some questions about IREN. Are we still coming through here, you guys? Mark, are you still picking us up on the feed? Okay, we'll see if Anthony can connect back, you guys. IREN headquarter move. This is super interesting. This is actually one that I saw some news on Twitter this morning about. So Daniel Roberts, the CEO, we had IREN on the channel actually yesterday. We had the chief commercial officer on. Okay, so Kent Draper. We were talking about AI, HPC. And it came up that IREN potentially should move their headquarters to the United States. Daniel Roberts, the CEO, jumped in on that and said that they are actually looking at the potential as well. So super interesting dynamic there. IREN is one that a lot of people have had a lot of interest about on our channel. This is a company that Anthony and I both personally hold. Obviously a very strong operator in the space, and with the expansion, both the upside and extension of that poolside deal really makes them a lucrative player in that space as well. Now, I see a couple of questions about Anthony's YouTube having a stroke here, so I'm going to shut down the live stream for today, you guys. We went 43 minutes. We were going to try an hour. We'll be back next Wednesday, 10 a.m. Mountain Time. It sounded like this time works pretty well for most people on the stream. So we'll aim for that one as well, you guys. And we'll continue to do our podcast in between that. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with Anthony's connection there, you guys. We made it through about half of our miners, so I'll make sure to save all the questions for next week. Thanks so much for tuning in. Before you end it here, guys, make sure you hit the like button. Let us know where you're from. If you have any questions we didn't get to, thanks so much for joining in, and we'll see you next Wednesday for the live stream.